hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Killian Brooks flipped the pancake with practiced ease, his calloused hands surprisingly gentle with the spatula. The kitchen smelled of butter and maple syrup, a weekend tradition he refused to abandon despite the growing chill in his marriage. "Want blueberries in this one, Cleo Bear?" he asked, glancing at his daughter seated at the kitchen table. Cleo didn't look up from her drawing pad, her small fingers clutching a blue crayon with fierce concentration. "Yes, please," she mumbled, her voice barely audible over the sizzle of the T7. Cleo was already showing remarkable artistic talent. Her drawings captured emotions with an intuition that sometimes unsettled Killian. Today's picture showed their family home with 3 stick figures standing apart from each other, vast empty spaces between them. The stairs creaked, announcing Marla's arrival. She swept into the kitchen in a rush of perfume and hurried energy, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She grabbed her travel mug without meeting Killian's eyes. "You're not eating?" Killian asked, keeping his voice neutral for Cleo's sake. "Staff meeting," Marla replied, filling her mug with coffee. "I told you yesterday." He hadn't remembered because she hadn't told him. These meetings had become more frequent over the past few months, always scheduled at times that used to be reserved for family. "Mommy, look at my drawing," Cleo said, holding up her artwork with hope in her eyes. Marla glanced at it, her smile not reaching her eyes. "That's nice, honey. The colors are pretty." She dropped a quick kiss on top of Cleo's head. "I'll be late tonight. Parent-teacher conferences." Again, Killian couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "That's the 3rd night this week." Marla's eyes flashed. "Some of us have careers that require extra hours, Killian. We can't all work with our hands and call it a day." The barb stung. His auto shop provided well for them, better than a kindergarten teacher's salary, but Marla had always viewed his work as beneath her family standards. The Quinns had expectations, as she frequently reminded him. "Daddy, you're burning it," Cleo said quietly. Killian turned back to the stove where the pancake had indeed blackened around the edges. He scraped it onto a plate for himself. "This one's mine. I like 'em crispy." He winked at Cleo, who giggled despite the tension in the room. The front door slammed as Marla left without another word. Killian set a fresh, perfect pancake in front of Cleo. "Extra blueberries, just how you like it." "Thanks, Daddy." Her smile was pure sunshine, the only warmth left in their home these days. They ate in companionable silence until the doorbell rang at precisely 10 a.m. Killian suppressed a groan. Sunday morning meant one thing: Lenore Quinn's weekly inspection. "Grandma's here," Cleo announced without enthusiasm. Killian wiped his hands on a dish towel. "Remember what we talked about? Best behavior, even when people aren't nice to us," Cleo finished. "Because we're better than that." He squeezed her shoulder. "That's my girl." Lenore Quinn stood on the porch like an appointment that couldn't be canceled. At 60, she maintained the rigid posture of someone who'd spent decades looking down at others. First as head nurse at Maple Hollow General, now as the self-appointed arbiter of their small town's social hierarchy. "You might consider trimming those bushes before they swallow the house," she said instead of hello, sweeping past Killian into the entryway. Her critical gaze cataloged every imperfection. The scuff on the wall where Cleo's bike had bumped it, the stack of mail on the side table, the work boots neatly placed but visibly worn. "Good morning to you too, Lenore," Killian said. She removed her coat, handing it to him as if he were a valet. "Where's my daughter?" "Staff meeting," he replied, hanging the coat in the closet. "Coffee, I suppose." She followed him to the kitchen where Cleo was finishing her breakfast. "Cleo, darling, come give Grandma a hug." Cleo slid from her chair and dutifully approached for an embrace that smelled of expensive perfume and felt like hugging a mannequin. Lenore held her at arm's length afterward, examining her as she might a specimen. "Your hair needs brushing, and those pajamas are much too small. Marla should have replaced them months ago." She turned to Killian. "Children grow quickly. One must stay ahead of these things." "I'm drawing a picture of our family," Cleo offered, returning to her seat. Lenore accepted the coffee Killian handed her, taking a cautious sip. "Too strong." she murmured before turning her attention to Cleo's artwork. That's interesting, but shouldn't you be practicing your reading? Your mother mentioned you're behind the other children. Killian's jaw tightened. Her teacher says she's right where she should be. In fact, her vocabulary tests are above grade level. Well, Lenore's smile was thin. Teachers these days set such low standards. In my day, excellence was expected, not merely adequate performance. She's 7, Killian said flatly. Precisely the age when habits form. Lenore set her cup down. I've brought some educational materials that would be more beneficial than constant drawing. Studies show artistic fixation can indicate developmental issues. Cleo's shoulders hunched slightly, her crayon pressing harder against the paper. Her art is fantastic, Killian countered. Her teacher thinks she has real talent. All parents believe their children exceptional, Lenore said with a dismissive wave. Marla was reading chapter books by Cleo's age. Marla doesn't remember that, Killian muttered, remembering his wife's admission during a rare, honest moment years ago. My mother remembers a childhood I never had till Lenore's eyes narrowed. I beg your pardon? Nothing. Killian refilled Cleo's juice glass. We appreciate your concern, but we're doing fine. Are you? Lenore glanced pointedly at the dishes in the sink. Marla works so hard at that school, then comes home to this. No wonder she's been stressed lately. The implication hung in the air. You're failing her. You've always been inadequate. Killian chose his words carefully, aware of Cleo's attentive ears. We all contribute in different ways. I handle most of the cooking and home repairs. Marla does school mornings and laundry. It works for us. Does it? Lenore's voice dripped with doubt. From what I hear, she's picking up quite a bit of slack. From what I hear, their conversations behind his back, mother and daughter, dissecting his shortcomings like surgeons identifying a disease. Cleo, why don't you go get dressed? Killian suggested gently. Maybe show Grandma your new books afterward. Once Cleo had trudged upstairs, Killian faced Lenore directly. I'd appreciate if you didn't undermine me in front of my daughter. I'm hardly. You are, he cut in, keeping his voice low but firm. Every visit, every comment. I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish, but it stops now. Lenore's face hardened. My daughter married beneath her potential. I accepted that, but I won't stand by while you drag Cleo down to your working-class expectations. As opposed to what? Your elitist ones. Killian shook his head. Cleo will find her own path. My job is to support her, not force her into some predetermined mold. How convenient for you, Lenore said coldly. Effort disguised as enlightenment. The front door opened again, Marla returning, her meeting apparently brief. She swept into the kitchen, faltering slightly at the tableau of her husband and mother locked in silent combat. Mom, I didn't expect you until later, she said, her smile too bright. I decided to come early, Lenore replied smoothly. So much to discuss. Marla's eyes darted between them. Everything okay? Fine, Killian said, turning to rinse his coffee mug. Your mother brought educational materials for Cleo. Oh, that's thoughtful. Marla set her purse down. Where is she? Getting dressed. I should head to the garage. Inventory day. It was a lie the shop was closed Sundays, but Killian needed space, away from the suffocating presence of Lenore and Marla's increasingly transparent deceptions. But you promised to take Cleo to the park, Marla protested. You're here now, he replied. Family time. Marla's expression flickered relief, poorly disguised as disappointment. Well, if you have to work, he always has to work, Lenore interjected. Men like Killian are defined by it. Men like me. Always the outsider, the grease monkey who'd somehow tricked the town's princess into marriage. Except lately, it felt like the trick was on him. I'll be back for dinner, he said, ignoring the bait. Tell Cleo I'll read her an extra story tonight. As he grabbed his jacket, he heard Lenore's stage whisper. You deserve so much better than this, darling. You both do. Killian stepped outside into the crisp Oregon air, the weight of his fracturing home momentarily lifting from his shoulders. The maple trees that gave their town its name flamed red and gold against the gray sky. Beautiful even in their dying. In his truck, he sat motionless for several minutes, watching through the window as Marla, and Lenore bent their heads together in conversation, united as they'd always been. Mother and daughter, keeper of secrets. Something was happening in his house, under his nose. He could feel it like the first tremors before an earthquake, subtle but unmistakable. The ground was shifting beneath his feet, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could maintain his balance. The call came Monday afternoon, just as Killian was finishing a transmission replacement on Mrs. Abernathy's ancient Volvo. His cell phone vibrated against the metal workbench, Rodney's name flashing on the screen. "What's up?" Killian asked, tucking the phone between his ear and shoulder as he tightened a final bolt. "Boss, I got food poisoning or something. Been puking for hours." Rodney's voice sounded weak and strained. "Can't make my shift tonight." Killian suppressed a sigh. The night shift was critical. They had 3 emergency tows scheduled and a rush job for the mayor's SUV. "You try the ginger ale trick." "Tried everything. Doc says it's probably that new seafood place. Said I won't be functional for at least 24 hours. All right, rest up. I'll cover." Killian ended the call and wiped his hands on a shop rag, mentally rearranging his evening. He'd have to call Marla, explain the situation. With any luck, she'd be understanding. She wasn't. "Tonight? You can't be serious," Marla snapped over the phone. "I have that curriculum planning session. We've talked about this for weeks." Had they? Killian couldn't remember any mention of it. "Can't you reschedule?" "It's mandatory, Killian. Unlike your decision to be the only mechanic in town without reliable staff." He bit back a retort about her sudden dedication to work. "I'll see if Blair can watch Cleo." "Blair? The man lives in a studio apartment and eats cereal for dinner. He's hardly appropriate child care." "He's good with her," Killian protested. Blair Moreno had been his best friend since high school, the brother he'd never had. Rough around the edges, maybe, but loyal to his core. "Look," Marla's voice softened into the persuasive tone that usually preceded something Killian wouldn't like. "My mother can take her for the night. She's been asking for more time with Cleo anyway." Killian's stomach clenched. "You know how I feel about overnight stays there. She's her grandmother, for God's sake. Not some stranger." "That's not the point." He struggled to articulate his unease. Lenore's influence was subtle but corrosive, especially without him as a buffer. Cleo comes back different after long visits with her. Quieter. Different how? More cultured? Less fixated on those endless drawings? Heaven forbid she learns something beyond what you can teach her. The insult landed precisely where intended. Killian gripped the phone tighter. "This isn't about me. It's about what's best for Cleo. What's best is not disrupting her entire routine because you can't manage her business properly." Marla's patience was clearly evaporating. "Mom can pick her up from after-school care. She'll have dinner ready, help with homework, make sure she's in bed on time. What exactly is your objection?" Put that way, his resistance seemed irrational, and yet the knot in his stomach tightened. "Let me talk to Cleo about it first. She's 7, Killian. She doesn't get to make these decisions." A muffled voice spoke in the background of Marla's call. "I have to go. Mom will get Cleo. She'll be fine for one night." The call ended before he could respond. Killian stared at the phone, that familiar sense of being outmaneuvered settling over him. When had his opinion become so irrelevant in decisions about his own daughter? He called Cleo's after-school program, asked to speak with her. "Daddy." Her small voice came through after a moment. "Hey, Cleo Bear. Listen, I have to work tonight at the garage. An emergency. Can I come with you? I can draw in the waiting room. I'll be super quiet." The hopeful note in her voice made his chest ache. "Not this time, kiddo. Too dangerous with all the towing happening." "Oh." A small pause. "Is Blair coming over then?" "Grandma's going to pick you up. You'll stay at her house tonight." The silence that followed stretched too long. "Cleo? You there?" "Do I have to?" she finally asked, her voice smaller than before. "Just for tonight. I'll pick you up first thing tomorrow, promise. Grandma's house smells funny, and she makes me use the fancy bathroom with the slippery rugs." Killian forced lightness into his tone. "One night of fancy bathroom rugs won't hurt. And hey, maybe she'll make those almond cookies you like. They're too hard. They hurt my teeth." Another pause. "Can you call me before bed?" "Absolutely. We'll have our good night talk, same as always." "Promise." "Cross my heart, Cleo Bear." After hanging up, Killian stood motionless in the garage bay, that knot of unease expanding. He was missing something, some connection he couldn't quite grasp. Cleo's reluctance seemed disproportionate to a single night at her grandmother's immaculate home. The evening stretched into night as Killian handled the emergency calls and worked on the mayor's vehicle. At 9, he called Lenore's house as promised. Quinn residence. Lenore answered, formal as ever. It's Killian. Can I talk to Cleo? She's asleep already. The poor thing was exhausted. Killian frowned at his watch. It's only 9. Her bedtime is 9:30. Children require adequate rest, especially when their routines are disrupted. I made an executive decision. Wake her up, please. I promised to say goodnight. Lenore's sigh carried a wealth of judgment. That would be irresponsible. She had a trying day, quite emotional after school. She needs uninterrupted sleep. Emotional how? The usual childhood dramatics. Nothing concerning. Her tone shifted. Marla mentioned you've been working excessive hours lately. That can't be healthy for your relationship. The deflection was transparent, but effective. My relationship with my wife isn't your concern, Lenore. Everything about my daughter is my concern, including her happiness. Something in her voice, a hint of satisfaction, perhaps raised Killian's hackles. Tell Cleo I called. I'll pick her up at 7. Make it 8. She'll need breakfast. 7. Killian repeated firmly. Have her ready. He hung up before she could object further, that sense of wrongness intensifying. He should drive over now, bring Cleo home despite the hour. But that would only escalate tensions with Marla, create more drama for Cleo to absorb. One night. What could happen in one night? Morning arrived after a restless few hours of sleep on the cot in his office. Killian showered in the garage's small bathroom, changed into the spare clothes he kept for emergencies, and drove straight to Lenore's pristine colonial on the affluent east side of Maple Hollow. The house looked as it always did, imposing, immaculate, unwelcoming despite its grand facade. Autumn leaves that dared fall on the walkway appeared to have been removed by hand rather than rake, leaving the property unnaturally tidy compared to its neighbors. Lenore opened the door before he could knock, her expression carefully neutral. You're early. It's 5 after 7, Killian countered, stepping past her into the foyer. Where's Cleo? In the kitchen, finishing her breakfast. You look terrible, by the way. Perhaps you should reconsider these overnight work sessions. Killian ignored the comment, heading directly to the kitchen where Cleo sat at a glass-topped table, a bowl of untouched oatmeal before her. She was drawing, her head bent low over her paper. Morning, Cleo Bear. Ready to go home. She didn't look up or respond. Her crayon moved methodically across the page, back and forth in repetitive strokes. Killian moved closer, crouching beside her chair. Cleo. When she finally raised her head, the change in her struck him like a physical blow. Her eyes were dull, face expressionless. None of her usual morning brightness, the animated chatter, the excited recounting of dreams, the spontaneous hugs remained. What's wrong, sweetheart? He touched her arm gently. She flinched, pulling away. She's been like this since waking, Lenore said from the doorway. I told you she was exhausted. Children need stability, Killian. The implication that this was somehow his fault ignited a slow burn of anger in his chest. What happened last night? Nothing happened. She had dinner, did a bit of reading practice, and went to bed. Lenore's tone was dismissive. Perhaps she's coming down with something. Killian turned back to his daughter. You feeling sick, Cleo Bear? No response. Just that same mechanical crayon movement. Let's get you home, okay? You can rest there. He reached for her drawing, intending to help her gather her things. The page revealed a dark, disturbing image. A child's bed, overshadowed by a tall, faceless female figure standing beside it. The figure loomed large, rendered in heavy, angry strokes of black crayon. What's this, Cleo? He asked quietly. She pulled the drawing away, clutching it to her chest protectively. Just childish nonsense, Lenore interjected. She had a nightmare. I checked on her twice. Killian stood, gathering Cleo's backpack. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go. She slid silently from her chair, still clutching the drawing. When he reached for her hand, she shook her head minutely, but followed him to the door. I've packed her lunch, Lenore said, handing him a paper bag. Healthier options than those processed snacks you buy. Thanks, Killian said automatically, though the word tasted like ash in his mouth. Something was very wrong, and he suspected Lenore knew exactly what it was. In the truck, Cleo sat motionless, staring straight ahead, the drawing still pressed to her chest. Did something scary happen at Grandma's house? Killian asked gently as they pulled away from the curb. And no answer. You can tell me anything, you know that, right? Even if someone told you to keep a secret. Her small fingers tightened on the paper, crinkling it slightly. I'm not mad at you, Cleo. I just want to help. They drove the rest of the way in silence. At home, Cleo went straight to her room, closing the door, something she never did. Killian stood in the hallway, listening to the soft sound of her crayons against paper, feeling helpless in his own house. Marla arrived an hour later, breezing in with a coffee and a shopping bag. How was work? Get the mayor's car finished. Were you last night? Killian asked without preamble. She blinked, momentarily thrown. I told you. Curriculum planning. Until when? We finished around 9:30. She set her things down, defensive now. Why the interrogation? Something happened to Cleo at your mother's house. Marla's expression shifted concern, but not surprise. Almost as if she'd been expecting this conversation. What do you mean happened? She won't talk. Won't eat. Won't let me touch her. Killian ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. All she does is draw the same image over and over, a woman standing over her bed. She probably had a nightmare. Mom said she was restless. This isn't about a nightmare, Marla. Your mother did something. Marla's face hardened. That's a serious accusation, Killian. My mother would never harm Cleo. Not physically, maybe, but something happened. Cleo's not herself. Children are resilient. She'll bounce back. Marla moved toward the kitchen. You're overreacting, as usual. Overreacting. Killian followed her. Our daughter is traumatized, and you're dismissing it. Don't be dramatic. She's adjusting to changes, that's all. What changes? What are you talking about? Marla filled a glass with water, her back to him. Life changes. Growth is not always comfortable. The vague non-answer fueled his suspicion. I'm taking her to see someone. A professional. A psychiatrist. Marla turned, incredulous. Because she's quiet after a sleepover? That's extreme, Killian, even for you. This isn't normal childhood behavior. Something scared her badly. Marla studied him for a moment, then sighed. Fine. If it will put your mind at ease, make an appointment. But when they tell you she's just being a moody kid, don't say I didn't warn you. Her easy capitulation surprised him. Marla usually fought harder against his parenting decisions, especially those that might reflect poorly on her family. I'll call Dr. Talcott today, Killian said. Watching her face for a reaction, she merely shrugged. Whatever you think is best. That night, and for days after, Cleo remained withdrawn. She mechanically went through her routines, eating small portions, going to school, returning to her room. But the vibrant, talkative child who ran to greet him after work was gone, replaced by a watchful silence that broke Killian's heart. The drawings continued. Always the same scene, the bed, the faceless woman standing over it. Sometimes with variations, the woman holding something, or the perspective shifting to show more of the room. But always dark, always unsettling. Dr. Remy Talcott had an opening the following week, an eternity to wait, while Cleo retreated further into herself. Killian took off work early on the appointment day, driving Cleo to the modest office building downtown where Talcott practiced. The psychiatrist was younger than Killian expected, with kind eyes and a straightforward manner that Cleo seemed to respond to. She asked Killian to wait outside while she spoke with Cleo alone. Children sometimes find it easier to express themselves without parents present, she explained. I'll call you in shortly. 45 minutes later, Dr. Talcott opened her office door. Mr. Brooks, could you join us? Inside, Cleo sat at a small table covered with drawings, dozens of them, variations on the same disturbing theme. She didn't look up when Killian entered. Cleo, why don't you keep drawing while I talk to your dad? Dr. Talcott suggested gently. Once they'd moved to the corner of the room, the doctor spoke in low tones. Mr. Brooks, Cleo, is experiencing significant emotional distress. She's repeating the same nightmare in these drawings, herself locked in a room, watched from the shadows. Did she tell you what happened? Not in words, but the drawings tell a story. She hesitated. In several, there's a red X over a male figure. In this one, she handed him a drawing he hadn't seen before. The figure is labeled Daddy. Killian stared at the image, his stomach turning. A stick figure of a man with a vivid red X slashed across it. His name scrawled in a child's handwriting. What does this mean? He asked, though part of him already knew. It suggests Cleo believes you're in danger or that someone wants you gone. Dr. Talcott's expression was grave. Children often process frightening information through symbolic representation. The faceless woman, the marked father figure, she's trying to communicate something she can't verbalize. Someone told her I was going to be removed, possibly, or she overheard something she wasn't meant to hear. The doctor glanced at Cleo, still absorbed in her drawing. I'd like to see her twice weekly for now. And Mr. Brooks? I strongly recommend you pay close attention to your home environment. Whatever triggered this came from someone Cleo trusts, someone she's afraid to name. The drive home was silent. Cleo staring out the window at the flame-colored trees that lined Maple Hollow's Main Street. Killian's mind raced, connecting dots he'd previously dismissed. Marla's increasing absences. Lenore's veiled comments. That overnight stay after which everything changed. You don't have to be scared anymore, he told Cleo as they pulled into their driveway. I'm going to fix this. I promise. She looked at him, then really looked at him for the first time in days. Her small face crumbled. Don't drink what she gives you, she whispered, the words barely audible. What? Who, Cleo Bear? Who gives me what? But she'd already retreated back into silence, the momentary connection broken. She unbuckled her seatbelt and slipped from the truck, headed for the safety of her room. Killian sat motionless behind the wheel, those 5 whispered words echoing in his mind, a warning he couldn't ignore. Don't drink what she gives you. Trina Brooks barged into the garage office without knocking, as was her habit since childhood. 2 years older than Killian and twice as outspoken, she'd appointed herself as protector after their parents died, a role she never outgrew despite his repeated assurances that he could handle his own problems. We need to talk, she announced, dropping into the chair across from his desk. Killian glanced up from the stack of invoices he'd been pretending to review. In truth, he'd been staring at the same page for 20 minutes, Cleo's whispered warning playing on a loop in his mind. I'm working, Trina. Yeah, you look real busy. She pushed a coffee cup toward him his third of the morning. You look like hell. Sleeping any better? He wasn't. Not since the psychiatrist appointment 3 days ago. I'm fine. Bullshit. Trina leaned forward, her eyes the same deep brown as his own, sharp with concern. What's going on? And don't say nothing because I know that face. It's your world is burning, but I'll handle it myself face. Despite everything, Killian felt a flicker of amusement. I have specific faces, a whole catalog of them. Spill it, little brother. He sighed, setting down his pen. Trina was relentless when worried, and maybe talking would help organize his scattered thoughts. It's Cleo, and Marla, and, I don't know, something's wrong. Trina's expression softened. Is Cleo still not talking? Javier mentioned he saw her at school yesterday. Said she was sitting alone at recess. Javier, Trina's son from her brief, disastrous marriage, was 2 years older than Cleo and had always been protective of his younger cousin. She's talking a little. Necessary stuff, yes, no, I'm not hungry. But nothing real. Killian rubbed his face. The psychiatrist thinks she overheard something traumatic, something about me being removed from the picture. Trina's eyebrows shot up. Removed? As in, I don't know. Cleo whispered something about not drinking what she gives me, then clammed up again. She? Marla? Or Lenore? Or both? He shook his head. It sounds crazy when I say it out loud. Not so crazy. Trina's voice had an odd note to it. That's actually why I came by. I saw Marla last night. At Riverbend. Riverbend was the new wine bar on the outskirts of town, popular with the professional crowd. Another staff meeting? He couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. Unless the elementary school is hiring male models these days, I doubt it. Trina's bluntness had always been both her best and worst quality. She was with some guy, younger, good-looking in that pretentious way she goes for. They looked cozy. The words landed like physical blows, yet Killian felt a strange, detached calm. Part of him had been collecting evidence of Marla's infidelity for months without consciously acknowledging it. The late nights, the new clothes, the declining interest in their marriage bed. "Did she see you?" he asked. "No, I was picking up takeout." They were in a back booth, but the way they were leaning in. Trina trailed off, then added quietly, "I'm sorry, Kill." He nodded, absorbing the information. "Staff photos." "What?" "The elementary school staff photos. They're on the website." He turned to his computer, typing quickly. The school's web page loaded, revealing a gallery of teacher portraits. Killian scrolled through them methodically until there. He pointed to a man in his early 30s, dark-haired and smirking at the camera. The caption read, "Ash Rourke, kindergarten." "That him?" he asked Trina. She leaned closer, squinting at the screen. "Yeah, that's the guy. Works with Marla, kindergarten teacher. Started last year." Killian stared at the image, memorizing the face of the man who was helping destroy his family. They worked closely on the curriculum committee. Curriculum committee. Trina snorted. "Is that what they're calling it now?" A memory surfaced, Marla mentioning Ash at dinner months ago. He's got such fresh teaching approaches. Really connects with the children. At the time, Killian had been grateful for a colleague who shared her passion for education. Now, those innocent comments took on a different meaning. "What are you going to do?" Trina asked. "Confront her?" "Not yet." Killian's mind was already working through scenarios, weighing options. "I need more information first." "About the affair?" "Kill, what more do you need?" "It's not just about the affair." He turned to face his sister. "This connects to whatever happened to Cleo at Lenore's house. To whatever made her so afraid. I need to understand all of it before I make a move." Trina studied him, concerned. "You think it's something worse than cheating? Don't drink what she gives you." Cleo's warning echoed again. "Maybe. I don't know yet. You'll tell me if you need help, right?" "Promise me, Killian." "I promise," he said, though they both knew he'd handle things himself, if possible. Always had. After Trina left, Killian closed the invoice program and pulled up the school website again, studying Ash Rourke's smug face. According to his bio, he coached Little League, volunteered at the animal shelter, and had previously taught in Portland before moving to Maple Hollow for the small-town charm. Killian checked his watch. School pickup was in 2 hours. He cleared his afternoon schedule. The elementary school parking lot was already filling with parents when Killian arrived, 15 minutes early. He parked toward the back, angling his truck for a clear view of the kindergarten exit. If Marla followed her usual schedule, she'd be leaving with the children at dismissal, supervising pickup before returning for her final hour of preparation. Sure enough, at exactly 3:15, she emerged with her class, smiling and waving to parents as each child was collected. Killian watched from a distance as she efficiently managed the chaos of departure, every inch the dedicated teacher. Then he saw him. Ash Rourke exited from the neighboring classroom, his own group of 5-year-olds trailing behind like ducklings. He herded them toward the pickup area where Marla stood. As they passed, he leaned in, saying something that made Marla laugh that IT was brief. Professional on the surface. But Killian saw what others might miss: the lingering eye contact, the subtle touch of fingers as they exchanged a stack of papers, the private smile that followed. The casual intimacy of lovers who thought themselves unobserved. Cleo emerged from the second-grade exit on the opposite side of the building. Killian got out of his truck, walking over to meet her. She spotted him, and her face lightened fractionally, not the beaming smile of before, but a small acknowledgement of his presence. "Hey, Cleo Bear. Thought I'd surprise you today." She nodded, taking his offered hand a positive sign. As they walked toward the parking lot, they passed the kindergarten area where Marla was still chatting with Ash. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of Killian. "What are you doing here?" she asked, recovering quickly. "I thought Cleo had her standing play date with Emma today." "Canceled. Emma's got a cold." He kept his tone casual, watching their reactions. "Thought I'd save you the trip home before your planning session." "Oh, that's thoughtful." Marla glanced at Ash, then back to Killian. Have you met Ash Rourke? He's been helping implement our new literacy program. Don't think I've had the pleasure. Killian extended his hand, and Ash took it after a barely perceptible hesitation. Nice to meet you, Ash said, his grip deliberately firm. Marla speaks highly of your auto shop, is it? The condescension was thinly veiled. Brooks Auto, yeah. You need work on that Accord of yours. Stop by. First oil change is free for teachers. Killian smiled, eyes cold. Marla's colleagues are family, after all. A flash of discomfort crossed Ash's face. I'll keep that in mind. We should go. Marla interjected, her voice artificially bright. Cleo needs her snack, and I have papers to grade before tonight's meeting. Another meeting. Another lie. Of course. Killian's hand tightened slightly around Cleo's. Say goodbye to Mom and Mr. Rourke, Cleo Bear. Cleo stared at Ash, her face suddenly stony. Goodbye, she said flatly. Then turned away. I in the truck. Killian waited until they were out of the parking lot before asking, Do you know Mr. Rourke well, Cleo? From visiting Mom's class. She nodded, looking out the window. Do you like him? A small, decisive headshake. Why not? She remained silent, her fingers worrying the edge of her jacket. It's okay to tell me, Cleo. You're not in trouble. After a long pause, she whispered, He takes Mom away. Killian's heart constricted. Even at 7, she understood more than they'd given her credit for. Takes her where, sweetheart? But Cleo had retreated again. The brief window of communication closed. She pulled out her drawing pad, flipping to a fresh page as Killian drove them home, his mind churning with new information and darkening possibilities. That night, after Cleo was asleep, Killian sat in his home office, laptop open to Ash Rourke's social media profiles. The man lived an apparently blameless life, posts about his students' achievements, community events, hiking trips in the Cascades. Nothing to suggest he was the type to pursue a married woman. Yet there were hints for those who knew to look. Check-ins at Riverbend Wine Bar. Always on nights Marla had meetings. Photos at locations Marla had mentioned visiting for professional development. The digital breadcrumbs of an affair conducted in plain sight, hidden only by the trust Killian had extended without question. His phone buzzed a text from Blair. Still on for Poker Friday? Killian had forgotten their monthly game. He started to decline, then paused, fingers hovering over the screen. Blair Moreno had skills Killian lacked, skills that might prove useful in understanding exactly what he was facing. Actually, he texted back, Can you come by tomorrow? Need your expertise on something. Blair's response was immediate. Name the time. I'll bring beer. The next day, Killian sent Cleo to her cousin Javier's house for the afternoon, a rare playdate she'd actually seemed interested in, and waited for Blair in his garage. Marla was at school, though he'd stopped believing that particular excuse days ago. Blair arrived in his battered pickup, a six-pack in one hand and a laptop bag in the other. Whatever this is about, it must be serious, he said, setting the beer on Killian's workbench. You never cancel a service appointment. I need your help with something off the books. Killian had known Blair since they were teenagers, stealing cigarettes behind the high school. Before Blair joined the construction crew that built half of Maple Hollow, he'd had a brief, lucrative career in what he euphemistically called information retrieval. Blair raised an eyebrow. The kind of help that needs beer at 2 in the afternoon? I'm intrigued. Killian took a breath. Saying it out loud would make it real in a way he'd been avoiding. I think Marla's cheating on me. With a kindergarten teacher named Ash Rourke. If Blair was surprised, he didn't show it. You think or you know. I know. Trina saw them together. I watched them at the school. Killian ran a hand through his hair. But there's more to it. Something worse. Worse how? Cleo's traumatized after staying at Lenore's house. Drawing disturbing pictures. She warned me not to drink something she gives me. Killian met his friend's eyes. I think they're planning something, Blair. Something that involves getting rid of me. Blair's face hardened. That's a serious accusation, Kill. I know how it sounds. That's why I need evidence. Killian pointed to the laptop bag. I need to know what they're saying when I'm not around. What they're planning. Blair was silent for a moment, weighing something internally. You're talking about surveillance. In your own home. Yes. That's borderline illegal, man. So is planning to harm your spouse. Blair studied him, then nodded once. Show me the layout of your house. For the next 3 hours, they worked methodically. Blair installed small, sophisticated microphones in strategic locations throughout the Brooks home: the kitchen, living room, master bedroom, even Lenore's guest room, where she often stayed during her extended visits. The device is connected to a secure server Blair configured, accessible only through an encrypted app on Killian's phone. Audio only, Blair explained. Video gets into murkier legal territory, and the sound quality on these is excellent. They'll activate with voice detection and send recordings directly to your phone. How long will the batteries last? Killian asked, watching his friend tuck a nearly invisible device behind a kitchen cabinet. 3 months, easy. But Kill. Blair straightened, his expression grave. Think carefully about this. Once you start listening, you can't unhear whatever you find. Are you sure you want to know? I need to know, Killian said quietly. For Cleo's sake, if nothing else. Blair nodded. One more thing. You said Ash Rourke, the kindergarten teacher. Yes. You know him. Not personally, but I've heard things. Guy's got a gambling problem. Owes money to some serious people in Portland. Blair packed away his tools. Just something to keep in mind. Gambling debts. The piece clicked into place, another potential motive beyond simple attraction. Thanks, Blair. I owe you. You do the same for me. Blair handed him the phone with the surveillance app. Just be careful, man. Don't confront anyone until you know exactly what you're dealing with. After Blair left, Killian stood in his empty house, the weight of what he'd done violating the privacy of his own home sitting uneasily on his conscience. But as he looked at the drawing Cleo had left on the refrigerator that morning, another ominous figure standing over a child's bed, his resolve hardened. Whatever was happening under his roof, whatever threat loomed over his daughter's head and his own, he would uncover it. And then, God help them all, he would end it. The first recordings came through that night, mundane household sounds, Marla talking to Cleo about homework, the television murmuring in the background. Nothing incriminating, nothing unusual. For 3 days, Killian listened to the ordinary rhythms of his home when he wasn't there, beginning to wonder if he'd overreacted, if the surveillance had been a paranoid mistake. Then, on the 4th day, everything changed. Killian was at the garage, finishing paperwork, when his phone buzzed with an alert from the surveillance app. New recording kitchen, 2:17 p.m. He plugged in his earbuds and tapped play. The sound of the front door opening. Footsteps on hardwood. Marla's voice, Mom? Are you here? In the kitchen, darling. Lenore's distinctive tone, crisp and controlled. More footsteps than the rustle of shopping bags being set down. Did you get everything? Lenore asked. Yes, though I had to go to 3 different stores. Small towns and their limited pharmacies. Marla sounded irritated. I don't see why we can't just use what we discussed originally. Because that leaves trace elements that show up in standard toxicology. This compound breaks down within hours, undetectable by the time any autopsy would be performed. Killian froze, the blood draining from his face. Toxicology. Autopsy. The words echoed in his head as the recording continued. Are you sure this will work? Marla again, her voice lower now. What if he tastes it? He won't. Not in that whiskey he drinks. 2 ounces mixed in, and within 30 minutes, heart arrhythmia begins. 45 minutes to complete cardiac arrest. Clean, efficient, virtually untraceable. And they'll rule it as natural causes. He works too hard, drinks too much, eats poorly. The physical strain of manual labor. A dozen contributing factors that won't raise suspicions. A pause, then Marla. What about Cleo? She's been watching us, drawing those pictures. Children's imaginations. No one takes them seriously. Lenore's voice hardened. Once Killian's gone, we'll get her proper therapy. Break that unnatural attachment. Mold her into something worthwhile. And the timing? Marla asked. Friday night. After your reconciliation dinner. A gesture of goodwill from a wife hoping to repair her marriage. You'll serve his favorite meal, pour his favorite drink. By midnight, it's done. Ash is nervous. Says the plan is too complicated. Ash needs to control himself. Does he want his debts cleared or not? This policy pays out $750,000. Enough to solve both your problems, freedom for you, financial salvation for him. Insurance investigators will see exactly what we want them to see. A grieving widow. A heart attack victim with a family history of cardiac issues. A drawer opened and closed. I've had the paperwork ready for weeks. Your signature matched perfectly. The sound of papers being shuffled. Then Marla's voice, hollow. Once the pills are in, he'll collapse. No one will question it. No one, Lenore agreed. Now hide these where he won't find them. We have 3 days to finalize arrangements. The recording ended, leaving Killian sitting motionless, ice flooding his veins. It was worse than he'd imagined. Not just an affair, not just betrayal, but a calculated murder plot. His murder, orchestrated by his wife, her mother, and her lover. His hands shook as he replayed the recording, listening for any hint that he'd misunderstood, that this was some bizarre misinterpretation. But the words were unmistakable, their intent crystal clear. They planned to poison him, collect insurance money Lenore had fraudulently arranged, and then reshape Cleo into their idea of a proper Quinn that Killian's first instinct was to go home immediately, confront them with the evidence. But Blair's warning echoed in his mind. Don't confront anyone until you know exactly what you're dealing with. He needed more the complete picture, all the players, every detail of their scheme that he called Blair, his voice tight with controlled fury. I need to access Marla's email. Cloud storage, anything digital. That bad, huh? Blair must have heard something in his tone. I'll be there in 20. While waiting, Killian transferred the recording to a secure external drive, then made a copy. Evidence. Proof. His hands were still trembling, not with fear now, but with rage. The absolute betrayal of it, not just of him, but of Cleo. Their willingness to use a 7-year-old child in their plot, to dismiss her trauma as imagination. This explains everything, he thought grimly. What Cleo overheard at Lenore's. What she's been trying to tell me through her drawings. Blair arrived, took one look at Killian's face, and said simply, "Show me." Killian played the recording. Blair's expression darkened with each word, his jaw clenching tight. When it finished, he was silent for a long moment. "I'll kill them," he finally said, voice deadly calm. "Not yet," Killian replied. "First, we learn everything. Then we decide what happens next." For the next hour, Blair worked his digital magic, breaking into Marla's email accounts, cloud storage, even her text message backup. The evidence accumulated rapidly. Messages between Marla and Ash discussing their relationship, their future plans. Emails with Lenore about the insurance policy. Searches on Marla's browser for undetectable poisons and cardiac arrest symptoms. Most damning was a folder of documents in Marla's cloud storage scans of an insurance policy with forged signatures, detailed notes on Killian's routine, and even a draft obituary, prepared weeks in advance. "Jesus," Blair muttered as they scrolled through the files. "They've been planning this for months. Since before school started," Killian agreed, noting timestamps on the earliest emails. "Probably since Ash came to town." A new file appeared as they watched a real-time update to Marla's cloud. It was a text message to Ash, Friday confirmed. "Mom has everything prepared. Case suspects nothing. After it's done, wait 2 months before we're seen together publicly." Ash's reply came seconds later. "This better work. I can't hold off Vargas much longer. He's threatening to break things if I don't pay by end of month. That IT will work," Marla assured him. "Mom's a former nurse. She knows exactly what she's doing." Blair looked at Killian. "Vargas is a loan shark. Operates out of Portland, but has connections here. Dangerous guy." Killian nodded, pieces continuing to fall into place. Ash's gambling debts. Marla's desire for freedom. Lenore's lifelong resentment of the man who'd stolen her daughter. A perfect storm of motives, converging on a single solution, his death. "So what now?" Blair asked. "Police." Killian considered it. The evidence was substantial, but complicated by how it was obtained. Illegal surveillance. Hacked accounts. Not yet. Detective Vale first. She'll know how to handle this properly. Lorna Vale had been a friend of Killian's mother before her death, one of the few people in Maple Hollow who'd supported the Brooks family when times were hard. Now the town's most experienced detective, she had a reputation for fairness and discretion. Going official means tipping your hand, Blair warned. If they get wind you're onto them, they'll accelerate the plan, Killian finished. I know, but I want this done right. Legal. I want them punished by the system, not by me. Blair studied him, skeptical. Even after what they planned to do to you? To Cleo? Especially because of that. Killian's voice hardened. I want them to lose everything. Legally. Publicly. I want the whole town to know exactly who they are. A new notification appeared on Killian's phone, another recording, this time from Cleo's room. His stomach clenched as he opened it, Marla's voice, falsely cheerful. What are you drawing today, sweetheart? Silence. Then the sound of paper being moved. Another one of these? Annoyance crept into Marla's tone. Cleo, these pictures are getting concerning. Maybe we should talk to Dr. Talcott about them. Cleo's voice so small. It's Daddy. The bottle has poison. Killian's heart stopped. What did you say? Marla's voice, sharp now. Where did you hear that word? Grandma said it. When I was supposed to be sleeping. A pause. Then Marla, controlled again. That's just your imagination, Cleo. Grandma would never say such a thing. Now I think these drawings need to stop. They're giving you bad dreams. The sound of paper tearing, followed by Cleo's cry of protest. No more pictures like this, Marla ordered. Do you understand? If Dr. Talcott sees these, she might think something's wrong with our family. You don't want Daddy to get in trouble, do you? Cleo's response was barely audible. You're going to hurt him. That's enough. The sharp sound of a drawer closing. No more crayons until you could draw nice things. Happy things. Footsteps, a door closing, then the soft sound of Cleo crying. Killian gripped the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles turned white. The manipulation. The gaslighting of his child. The casual cruelty. I need to get Cleo, he said, standing abruptly. Now. Whoa, hold on. Blair blocked his path. Think this through. You go home now, they'll know something's wrong. You have to play this smart, Kill. That's my daughter. They're terrorizing her. And if you tip them off, they might hurt both of you sooner. Or run. Blair's expression was sympathetic but firm. Call Detective Vale. Let her tell you how to proceed. Keep Cleo safe by playing dumb until the authorities can move. The logic penetrated Killian's rage. Blair was right. Acting impulsively now could jeopardize everything: legal consequences, custody of Cleo, maybe even their safety. He needed to be strategic, just for a little longer. Fine, he said, picking up his phone. I'll call Vale, but I'm getting my daughter out of that house tonight, one way or another. Detective Lorna Vale had aged well in the decades since Killian had last seen her silver, streaking her dark hair, laugh lines deepening around her eyes, but the same shrewd intelligence in her gaze as she studied the evidence spread across her desk. This is compelling, she admitted, setting down the insurance documents. But obtained illegally. I can't use any of it in court. I'm not asking you to use my recordings, Killian replied. I'm asking you to help me catch them in the act legally, with proper warrants and procedures. They sat in Vale's small office at the Maple Hollow police station, door closed for privacy. Blair waited outside, keeping watch in case Marla or Lenore somehow learned of the meeting. That's easier said than done, Vale cautioned. Conspiracies like this, assuming it is a conspiracy, leave little tangible evidence until the crime occurs. So we wait until they try to poison me. Killian couldn't keep the edge from his voice. What about Cleo? She's trapped in that house with them. Vale's expression softened. I understand your concern. Genuinely. But we need to build this case carefully if you want it to stick. I have the recordings, which any halfway decent defense attorney will get thrown out as fruit of the poisonous tree. Illegally obtained evidence isn't admissible, Killian. He leaned forward. Then tell me what is admissible. Tell me how to do this right. Vale considered him for a long moment. You said the plan is set for Friday night. Yes, a reconciliation dinner. Just the two of us. That gives us 3 days to prepare a proper sting operation. She tapped her pen against the desk. If, and I stress, if there's truly a plot to harm you, we need them to take concrete steps toward executing it while under legal surveillance. Meaning we need to get a judge to sign off on surveillance warrants based on legitimate probable cause, not your illegal recordings. She grimaced. And we need you to play along with their plan while wearing a wire. A wire, Killian repeated flatly. It's the most direct route. You attend this dinner, act normally, let Marla serve you the drink. We monitor from outside, ready to intervene before you actually consume anything suspicious. And Cleo, we'll need to remove her from the house before the operation begins. Safely, quietly, without alerting your wife. Vale tapped her pen again. Do you have someone she can stay with? Someone Marla wouldn't question. Killian thought quickly. My sister Trina. Cleo often has playdates with her cousin. Perfect. Arrange that for Friday afternoon. Make it seem routine. Vale began writing notes. In the meantime, I need something official to take to a judge. Something that doesn't reveal your illegal surveillance. Like what? Like fresh evidence. Vale looked up. You mentioned Cleo's been drawing disturbing images. Pictures that suggest knowledge of this plot. Yes, dozens of them. Bring her in. Tomorrow. Tell your wife it's a follow-up with the psychiatrist. I'll have Dr. Talcott here. Make it official. If Cleo produces more drawings, make statements about what she's seen or heard that's legitimate evidence I can take to a judge. Killian nodded slowly. You think she'll talk? Children often feel safer disclosing to professionals, especially when removed from the threatening environment. Vale's face hardened. And if she confirms what you suspect, I'll have grounds for emergency protective orders along with surveillance authorization. And until then, you act completely normal. Give them no reason to suspect you know anything. She fixed him with a penetrating look. Can you do that, Killian? Go home tonight, look your wife in the eye, and pretend everything's fine. Could he sit across from Marla at dinner, knowing she was plotting his death? Sleep beside her, knowing she'd rather he never woke up? The very idea made his skin crawl. But for Cleo's sake, for justice, yes, he said firmly. I could do whatever it takes to protect my daughter and expose what they've done. Vale nodded, apparently satisfied. Bring Cleo tomorrow at 2 p.m. Dr. Talcott will be here. And Killian, she hesitated. If this is all true, if they're really planning what the evidence suggests, you'll need to prepare yourself. This won't end cleanly. There will be public scrutiny, legal battles, custody issues. Your life and Cleo's will be disrupted in ways you can't anticipate. Our lives are already disrupted, Killian replied grimly. At least this way, we'll have a future to rebuild. As he left the station, Blair fell in his step beside him. What's the plan? Sting operation. Friday night. Until then, I play the oblivious husband. Blair whistled low. That's asking a lot. It's asking everything, Killian corrected. But it's the only way to do this right. When he arrived home that evening, Marla was in the kitchen, preparing dinner as if it were any ordinary night. As if she weren't measuring his life in days. She smiled when he entered, the same smile he'd once found beautiful, now revealed as a mask covering unimaginable betrayal. You're late, she said, stirring something on the stove. Busy day. The usual, he replied, forcing casualness into his tone. Where's Cleo? In her room. Still not talking much. Marla sighed dramatically. I'm worried about her, Killian. Those drawings are getting more disturbing. I think we should consider more intensive therapy. The audacity of her concern, knowing she was the cause of Cleo's trauma, made his blood boil. But he kept his expression neutral. Actually, I called Dr. Talcott today. She can see Cleo tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow? I have that parent meeting. I'll take her, Killian interjected. Already arranged to leave work early. Marla studied him for a moment, perhaps sensing something different in his demeanor. That's unexpectedly responsible of you. He shrugged. She's my daughter too, and I want her better. Of course. Marla turned back to the stove. Oh, I meant to tell you. I thought we could have dinner, just us on Friday night. Try to reconnect. Things have been tense, and I think we should talk about where our marriage is heading. Where it's heading is your arrest, Killian thought grimly. Aloud, he said, sound good. I'll make sure I'm home on time. I'll cook your favorite. Steak, roasted potatoes, that bourbon sauce you like. Bourbon sauce. For bourbon drinks. The perfect delivery system for an undetectable poison. Looking forward to it, he lied. After dinner, he went to Cleo's room, finding her sitting on her bed, a book open but unread in her lap. Her crayons and paper were noticeably absent. Hey, Cleo Bear, he said gently, sitting beside her. What happened to your drawing things? She glanced toward her door, then whispered, Mom took them. Said I draw bad pictures. I see. He kept his voice calm despite the anger coursing through him. Well, I have some news. Tomorrow you and I are going to see Dr. Talcott again. Would you like that? She nodded, her eyes brightening slightly. And maybe afterward, we could stop for ice cream. Just you and me. Can we get new crayons too? She whispered. Absolutely. He stroked her hair, this small, brave child who tried so hard to warn him. Cleo, I want you to know something important. Whatever you've seen, whatever you've heard that scared you, I'm going to fix it. You don't have to be afraid anymore. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in weeks, hope dawning in her eyes. Promise? Cross my heart. He pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. Everything's going to be okay. That night, lying rigid beside Marla's sleeping form, Killian stared at the ceiling and planned every detail of the coming days. The sting operation, the arrests, the aftermath. There would be no forgiveness, no reconciliation, no mercy. The woman beside him, the mother of his child, had orchestrated his murder with cold precision. Some betrayals were unforgivable. Some wounds couldn't heal. And some enemies needed to be destroyed, not forgiven. The next afternoon, Killian brought Cleo to the police station where Dr. Talcott waited in an interview room designed for children, colorful furniture, toys, and notably, a fresh box of crayons and stack of drawing paper. This isn't your office, Cleo observed quietly as they entered. No, it's a special place where children can feel safe telling important things, Dr. Talcott explained, her kind eyes meeting Cleo's. Detective Vale asked if we could meet here today. Vale stood in the corner, her presence unobtrusive but watchful. Hello, Cleo. I'm Detective Vale. I'm a friend of your grandmother, your dad's mom, Caroline. Cleo's expression opened slightly at the mention of the grandmother she'd never met but heard stories about. Daddy says I have her smile. You do, Vale agreed. I'd recognize it anywhere. Dr. Talcott gestured to the crayons. Would you like to draw something while we talk, Cleo? Sometimes it's easier to show things than say them. Cleo nodded, sliding into a chair at the small table. Killian watched from the doorway as she selected a crayon black, as always lately, and began to draw with focused intensity. Your dad tells me you haven't been drawing at home lately, Dr. Talcott said conversationally. Mom took my crayons. Cleo didn't look up, said my pictures were bad. Pictures are never bad, Dr. Talcott assured her. They're just your way of telling stories when words are hard to find. What story are you telling now? Cleo worked in silence for several minutes, adding red crayon to the predominantly black image. Finally, she pushed the paper toward Dr. Talcott. It's Daddy, she said softly. Killian stepped closer, looking over Dr. Talcott's shoulder at the drawing. His heart clenched. The image showed a man clearly meant to be him sitting at a table. A woman stood beside him, holding a drink in one hand. The bottle on the table had a skull drawn on it. The figure of Killian was outlined in red, his eyes wide and staring. Can you tell me about this picture? Dr. Talcott asked gently. Cleo glanced at Killian, then back at the paper. The drink will make Daddy sick. How do you know that? I heard them. At Grandma's house. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I got thirsty. They were in the kitchen. Who was in the kitchen? Cleo? Vale asked, her tone carefully casual. Mom and Grandma. And Mr. Rourke. Cleo's fingers twisted in her shirt. They said Daddy works too hard. That his heart would just stop. That no one would know. The room was utterly silent. Then Dr. Talcott asked, Is that why you stopped talking? Because of what you heard. Cleo nodded, tears filling her eyes. Grandma said I could never tell. But they'd take me away from Daddy if I did. But he'd be gone soon anyway. Killian felt something break inside him, rage and grief colliding in a tidal wave of emotion. He crossed the room and knelt beside Cleo's chair. You were so brave to tell us this, Cleo Bear. So brave. She launched herself into his arms, small body shaking with sobs. They're going to kill you, she cried. I don't want you to die. Over Cleo's head, Killian met Vale's eyes. The detective's expression was grim, determined. She gave a small nod. They had what they needed now. Legitimate testimony. Probable cause. The legal foundation to move forward. Later, after Cleo had calmed and was contentedly drawing with Dr. Talcott happier pictures now, the burden of her terrible secret finally lifted. Vale pulled Killian aside. "I'm filing for emergency protective custody of Cleo and surveillance authorization for Friday night," she said quietly. "A judge I trust will sign off by morning. We'll have officers in place, everything ready." But Killian, her expression turned serious. "This is extremely dangerous. If they suspect anything, if they deviate from the plan, I understand the risks," he replied. "But they need to be stopped. Permanently. They will be." Vale's jaw set. "I've already contacted the Insurance Fraud Division and the State Licensing Board for teachers. Once we have them on attempted murder charges, the rest will follow." Killian nodded, his mind already racing ahead to Friday night. The final confrontation. The moment when Marla would realize her perfect plan had failed, that the man she'd tried to poison was fully aware of her betrayal and had been one step ahead all along. "You'll need to make arrangements for Cleo," Vale continued. "Somewhere she'll be safe during the operation and afterward while we sort out custody issues." "Trina's taking her," Killian confirmed. "Overnight stay, planned in advance so it won't seem suspicious." "Good." Vale hesitated. "And you? Are you sure you can go through with this? Sit across from your wife, knowing what she planned, and still play your part." Killian thought of Cleo's drawing his figure outlined in red, marked for death. Of the recordings, Marla and Lenore discussing his murder as casually as a dinner menu. Of Cleo, traumatized and silenced by their cruelty. "I can do it," he said, his voice hardening. "I'll give the performance of my life." Killian woke Friday morning with cold clarity, his mind razor-sharp despite sleeping only a few hours. Today was the day. The end of his marriage, the exposure of the conspiracy, the first step toward rebuilding a life for himself, and Cleo free from Marla's manipulation and Lenore's toxicity. Vale had called the previous evening, confirming everything was in place. Judge-approved surveillance. Officers prepared to intervene. A prosecutor standing by. All that remained was for Killian to play his part convincingly, the unsuspecting husband walking into a trap that had become his own. Marla was already gone when he entered the kitchen, a note on the counter explaining she had early meetings but would be home by 5 to prepare their special dinner. Cleo sat at the table, eating cereal with more appetite than she'd shown in weeks. The weight of her secret had lifted, returning some of her natural brightness. "Morning, Cleo Bear," he said, dropping a kiss on top of her head. "Ready for your sleepover at Aunt Trina's tonight?" She nodded, smiling slightly. "Javier's making popcorn, and we're watching movies." "Sounds fun." He poured himself coffee, maintaining the facade of normalcy. "I packed your overnight bag already. It's by the door." "Is everything really going to be okay?" she asked suddenly, her spoon hovering above her bowl. Killian met her eyes. "Yes, I promise. After today, things will be different but better. Trust me. I trust you, Daddy." The day passed in a blur of final preparations. Killian deliberately created a public spectacle at lunch, stopping at Joe's bar downtown, ordering whiskey at noon, engaging in loud, bitter comments about his failing marriage. The performance had to be perfect. Marla needed to believe he was spiraling, vulnerable, an easy target. "Trouble at home?" Joe asked as he poured Killian's second drink. "You could say that." Killian made sure his voice carried to the other patrons. "Wife's been distant for months. Says we need to talk tonight." We all know what that means. The sympathetic murmurs around him confirmed the gossip would spread quickly. Small towns thrived on such talk. By dinner time, Marla would have heard about his public breakdown, further convincing her that tonight was the perfect opportunity. After lunch, he drove Cleo to Trina's house, hugging her tightly before leaving. "Be good for Aunt Trina, okay? I'll see you tomorrow. Promise." The anxiety in her voice tore at him. "Absolute promise. Nothing's going to happen to me." He smiled reassuringly. "Detective Vale and I have a plan, remember?" This seemed to satisfy her. She waved from Trina's porch as he drove away, his last glimpse of her until this nightmare ended. His next stop was Blair's apartment, a final check of equipment and strategy. "Wires undetectable," Blair confirmed, helping Killian secure the small recording device under his shirt. "Transmits directly to Vale's team. They'll be parked 2 houses down, ready to move. And the cameras? Installed this morning while Marla was out. One in the dining room, one in the kitchen. They'll catch everything. Blair gripped Killian's shoulder. You sure about this, man? Last chance to back out. I'm sure. Killian's voice was steel. They plan my death. Use my child. Forge my signature. They don't get mercy. Blair nodded grimly. Then it's time for your final performance. Send her the text. Killian pulled out his phone, typing the message they'd crafted to set the stage. You win. I'm done fighting. See you at dinner. We'll talk. Marla's response came seconds later. Thank you for giving us this chance. I'll make it special. Special indeed, Killian thought darkly. His last step before returning home was the most difficult, a carefully calculated verbal attack on Rodney at the garage, loud enough for customers to overhear. He accused his loyal employee of shoddy work, threatened to fire him, and stormed out, leaving behind shocked witnesses who would later confirm his increasingly erratic behavior in the days leading up to his heart attack. By the time Killian pulled into his driveway at 6:30 that evening, he laid a perfect foundation of public meltdowns and emotional instability. Anyone investigating his sudden death would find a clear narrative. A man under strain, his health compromised by stress and alcohol. A tragic but unsurprising end. Marla's car was already there, as was a vehicle he recognized as Ash's Accord, parked a discreet distance down the street. So Ash was nearby, perhaps waiting to enter once Killian was incapacitated or dead. One more piece of the puzzle falling into place. Let the show begin, Killian thought, schooling his features into an expression of defeated resignation as he entered his home for what Marla believed would be his final time. The house smelled of cooking meat and spices, soft music playing from the kitchen speakers. Marla appeared in the hallway, wearing a dress he hadn't seen before, her hair styled, makeup perfect. The picture of a wife making an effort to reconnect. You're right on time, she said, smiling warmly. Dinner's almost ready. Smells good. He managed a tired smile in return, hanging up his jacket. Sorry about the text earlier. Rough day. We all have those. She approached, kissing his cheek, the first such gesture in months. Why don't you go freshen up? I'll pour drinks. I bet you will, he thought grimly. Sound good. Bourbon. What else? Her smile widened. Your favorite. In the bathroom, Killian checked the wire one final time, then stared at his reflection. The man looking back seemed older than his 39 years, lines etched by betrayal and strain. But his eyes were clear, focused. The eyes of a hunter, not prey. You don't poison a fighter and expect him to die quietly. Downstairs, the table was set with their best dishes, candles lighting the room with a warm glow. Marla stood by the sideboard, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. She handed one to Killian as he entered. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. He touched his glass to hers, pretending to sip while watching her over the rim. Did she realize this was the last meal she'd eat as a free woman? The last time she'd play the role of devoted wife before the mask was ripped away. You've gone all out, he observed, gesturing to the carefully arranged table. I wanted tonight to be special. She set his plate before him, steak perfectly cooked, potatoes golden, the bourbon sauce he usually loved drizzled artfully over the meat. I feel like we've been drifting apart. I want to fix that. Fix that with poison and life insurance, Killian thought. But he nodded, cutting into his steak. I appreciate the effort. They ate in relative silence. Marla asking occasional questions about his day, his work, maintaining the charade of marital reconnection. Killian answered minimally, watching as she refilled his glass twice, each time with just a touch more bourbon than necessary. Diluting the poison, perhaps, or ensuring he consumed enough. I heard you were at Joe's today, she finally said, her tone carefully neutral. At lunch, the gossip had spread as expected. Needed a drink. Things have been intense lately. Are you unhappy, Killian? Her expression was a masterpiece of concern. With us? With me? The audacity of the question nearly broke his composure. Was he unhappy with the wife planning his murder? The mother traumatizing their child? I think we both know this marriage isn't working, he said instead, the words bitter on his tongue. Hasn't been for a while. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Her fingers were cool against his skin. We can fix it. Start fresh. Can we? He met her eyes directly. After everything, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. What do you mean? The distance. The secrets. He paused meaningfully. The lies. Her hand withdrew slightly. We've both made mistakes. Have we? He lifted his glass, pretending another sip of the poisoned bourbon. Or just you? Wariness entered her expression now. What are you saying, Killian? Nothing. He forced a smile. Just thinking out loud. This bourbon is good. Strong. Relief visibly washed over her. Mom gave it to me. Said it was a special reserve. I bet she did, Killian thought, imagining Lenore carefully measuring the lethal dose. So where do we go from here? He asked, playing his part in this final act. How do we fix things? Marla launched into rehearsed platitudes about communication and compromise, watching him intently as he continued to pretend drinking the bourbon. 30 minutes into the meal, he began his performance, shifting uncomfortably, touching his chest, breathing more heavily. Are you all right? Marla asked, perfect concern in her voice. Just heartburn, I think. He loosened his collar. Maybe that whiskey at lunch wasn't a good idea. Let me get you some water. She rose quickly, too quickly for genuine concern, he noted. The predator sensing prey weakening. While she was in the kitchen, Killian heard the faint click of the back door, followed by muffled footsteps. A quick glance confirmed his suspicion Ash Rourke had entered through the rear entrance, likely with a key Marla had provided. The kindergarten teacher crept toward the stairs, carrying what appeared to be an overnight bag. Moving in already, Killian realized with disgust. Ready to take my place while my body's still warm. Marla returned with water, oblivious to Killian's awareness of Ash's presence. Drink this. It might help. He accepted the glass, pretending increased discomfort. Something's not right. I feel strange. Maybe you should lie down. The eagerness beneath her concern was palpable. Let me help you upstairs. No, he gasped, clutching his chest more dramatically. I need air. He staggered to his feet, deliberately knocking over his glass. Bourbon spilled across the table, evidence now preserved for collection. Killian, you don't look well at all. Marla's voice pitched higher, the performance of a worried wife reaching its crescendo. Should I call an ambulance? No time, he wheezed. Just need to get outside. He stumbled toward the front door, knowing Vale's team was watching, waiting for his signal. As he passed the living room window, he raised his hand to his head, the agreed-upon gesture indicating officers should prepare to move in. On the front porch, he collapsed into a chair, breathing heavily as Marla hovered beside him, phone in hand, ostensibly ready to call for help that would arrive too late. Maybe I should call your sister, she suggested, the perfect worried spouse. Or my mother. She has medical training. I bet you'd like her here to confirm the job's done, Killian thought bitterly. No, he gasped. Just give me a minute. Inside the house, hidden cameras captured Ash descending the stairs, now wearing a different outfit, one of Killian's sweaters, borrowed from his closet with presumptuous familiarity. The footage would later show him entering the kitchen, examining the spilled bourbon with clinical interest before saying to Marla when she stepped back inside, "Is it happening?" Her reply, picked up clearly by both cameras and Killian's wire. Yes. He'll be out of the picture soon. The evidence was complete. The conspiracy captured in real time. All that remained was the final confrontation, the moment when the hunted revealed himself as the hunter. Killian waited until Marla returned to the porch before slowly straightening in his chair, his breathing normalizing, his expression transforming from pain to cold focus. Feeling better? She asked, confusion replacing her false concern. Much better, he replied, rising to his feet. Amazing how quickly poison symptoms fade when you don't actually drink the poison. The blood drained from her face. What are you talking about? The game is over. Marla. He stepped toward her as she backed away. I know everything. About the affair with Ash. About the murder plot. About the insurance policy your mother forged. You're crazy, she whispered, but her eyes darted to the street, calculating escape routes. The stress is making you paranoid. Am I? He moved closer. Is that why Ash is inside right now? Where are my clothes? Planning to take my place after my convenient heart attack? Real fear showed in her expression now. Killian, you're not making sense. You traumatized our daughter, he continued, his voice hardening. She heard everything at your mother's house. Drew pictures trying to warn me. And you took away her crayons, made her think she'd be taken from me. I don't know what you're talking. Save it for your lawyer. He gestured toward the street, where unmarked police vehicles were now pulling up. Detective Vale has been listening to our entire conversation. Officers are about to arrest Ash inside. Your mother's probably already in custody. It's over, Marla. You failed. As if on cue, police officers emerged from the vehicles, weapons drawn, approaching the house with practiced efficiency. Marla's face contorted with disbelief, then rage. You set me up, she hissed. You've been playing me all along. Ironic, isn't it? Killian smiled without warmth. Planning someone's death only to find they've been planning your arrest. Detective Vale approached, handcuffs ready. Marla Brooks, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. As Vale continued the Miranda warning, other officers escorted Ash from the house in handcuffs. The kindergarten teacher's face ashen with shock. Marla seemed to collapse into herself as the handcuffs closed around her wrists. This is a mistake, she said desperately. Killian, tell them, this is all a misunderstanding. He stared at her, this woman he'd once loved, now a stranger revealed in her true, monstrous form. Surprised to see a dead man standing? He asked quietly. The last fragment of her mask crumbled. You'll regret this, she spat. You're nothing without me. You were always nothing, just a project my mother and I took on out of pity. Better to be nothing than whatever you are, Killian replied, watching dispassionately as Vale led her toward the waiting police car. Left alone on the porch of what had once been his family home, Killian felt no triumph, no vindication, only a hollow exhaustion and the weight of the long road ahead. Rebuilding a life, healing his daughter, finding a way forward from this catastrophic betrayal. But one thing was certain, they had failed. He was alive, they were facing justice, and Cleo was safe. The hunters had become the hunted, their perfect plan dismantled by the very man they tried to remove. The days following the arrests unfolded in a blur of police statements, evidence processing, and shocking revelations. Killian moved through it with grim determination, his focus singular, protecting Cleo and ensuring maximum legal consequences for the conspirators. Detective Vale kept him updated as the case developed. The evidence is overwhelming, she explained during a briefing at the station. The surveillance footage clearly shows Ash handling the sedative, pouring it into your bourbon. When we searched Lenore's house, we found the remaining pills hidden in a prescription bottle labeled as heart medication. What about the insurance policy? Killian asked. Completely fraudulent. Your signature was forged expertly, but still forgery. The policy was set up 3 months ago, shortly after Marla and Ash began their relationship, according to their text messages. Even knowing what they planned, hearing the clinical details made Killian's skin crawl. And their statements? Vale's expression tightened. They're turning on each other, as expected. Ash claims he was manipulated by Marla, and Lenore says he only participated because of gambling debts and threats from Lenore. Marla blames her mother's influence and Ash's financial desperation. And Lenore, Vale, shook her head. She's the most calculating of all. Hasn't said a word except to demand her lawyer. Typical, Killian muttered. Even facing murder charges, Lenore maintained her imperious distance. The prosecutor is pushing for maximum charges, Vale continued. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, insurance fraud, forgery, child endangerment. No plea deals, no leniency. Good. Killian had insisted on this approach, despite pressure from Marla's attorney for a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against the others. He wanted no compromises, no mercy deals, just the harshest possible consequences for all three. There's something else, Vale added, hesitation in her voice. We found a journal in Lenore's house. Detailed notes about the plan, dating back almost a year. Killian's stomach tightened. A year? Before Ash even came to town? Yes. It appears Lenore was considering various removal options for quite some time. Ash's arrival and his financial problems simply provided the perfect opportunity and accomplice. The revelation shouldn't have surprised him, yet it did. The premeditation, the cold-blooded planning, not a crime of passion or desperation, but a methodical plot cultivated over months and years. His marriage hadn't simply failed. It had been poisoned from within by Lenore's relentless influence and Marla's willing participation. "Does Cleo know any of this?" he asked, his thoughts turning to his daughter as they always did. "No. Dr. Talcott recommends shielding her from the details." Vale's expression softened. "How is she doing?" "Better, I think. Talking more. Drawing happier pictures." Killian managed a small smile. "Trina's been amazing with her. Having her cousin around helps." They'd been staying at Trina's house since the arrests. Unable to return to their home, now contaminated by betrayal and crime scene tape. Killian had already contacted a realtor about selling the property. Neither he nor Cleo could heal properly in those walls. "The preliminary hearing is scheduled for next week," Vale said. "The prosecutor wants Cleo's drawings and testimony from Dr. Talcott, but not Cleo herself. They believe the adult evidence is more than sufficient." "Good. I don't want her anywhere near a courtroom." As Killian left the station, his phone rang Blair with news of his own reconnaissance. "Thought you should know," his friend said without preamble. "Ash filed the death claim yesterday." "What?" Killian stopped walking. "I'm obviously not dead." "Exactly. That's how sloppy they've gotten. Vale's team intercepted it at the insurance company." Apparently, Ash didn't get the memo about the arrests. He was following the original timeline. Another piece of evidence, another nail in their collective coffin. "Thanks for telling me. There's more," Blair continued. "I've been keeping tabs on Lenore's accounts like you asked. Large withdrawal 3 days ago, 50,000 in cash. No trace of where it went." Killian frowned. "Escape money? That'd be my guess. Or payment to someone we don't know about yet." Blair's voice lowered. "Be careful, Kill. Even locked up, these people are dangerous." The warning stayed with Killian as he drove to Trina's house, eyes constantly checking his rearview mirror. The conspiracy might have been broader than they discovered. Lenore, with her social connections and financial resources, could have contingency plans they hadn't uncovered. Cleo ran to greet him when he arrived, her smile more natural than it had been in weeks. "Daddy, Aunt Trina let me make cookies." He swept her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her hair, vanilla and sugar and childhood innocence. "Did she now? Save any for me. 2 whole cookies just for you." She pulled back, studying his face with the serious expression that sometimes made her seem older than her years. "Did the bad people go to jail?" "Yes, sweetheart. They did. And they're going to stay there for a very long time." She nodded, satisfied. "Good. They wanted to hurt you. But they didn't," he reminded her gently. "Because you were brave and told me what you saw and heard. You saved me, Cleo Bear." Her smile returned, brighter now. "Can we get a new house? One without scary memories?" "Absolutely." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "In fact, I was thinking we might move closer to Aunt Trina and Javier. Would you like that?" "Yes." She hugged him again, then skipped toward the kitchen. "Come see my cookies before I eat them all." Trina met him in the hallway, her expression a mix of concern and relief. "Good news for Vale. The case is solid. Preliminary hearing next week." He lowered his voice. "But Blair says Lenore made a large cash withdrawal before her arrest. We don't know where the money went." Trina's eyes hardened. "You think she has other accomplices?" "I don't know. But I'm not taking any chances until all 3 of them are safely convicted and locked away." He glanced toward the kitchen where Cleo waited. "I'm selling the house. Looking for something near you. Maybe that new development in Bend." "Good. Fresh start." Trina squeezed his arm. "You know you can stay here as long as you need." "I appreciate that. More than I can say." Later that evening, as Cleo slept peacefully in the guest room, Killian sat on Trina's porch with a cup of coffee, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood. His phone buzzed with a text from Vale. "Need you at your house tomorrow morning. New evidence discovered. 9 a.m. He replied with confirmation, unease prickling along his spine. What else could they have found? What other secrets lay buried in the home he'd shared with Marla? When he arrived the next morning, yellow crime scene tape still cordoned off the property. Vale waited in the driveway, her expression grim. "What's happened?" Killian asked as he approached. Forensics found something during their sweep. She led him toward the house. "Hidden compartment in your bedroom closet, behind Marla's shoe rack." Inside, the home felt alien furniture, slightly displaced by investigating officers, chemical residue from evidence processing dusting various surfaces. Vale brought him upstairs to the master bedroom, where a section of the closet wall had been removed, revealing a small hidden space. "This was recently constructed," Vale explained. "False panel, professionally installed. We found these inside." She handed him a sealed evidence bag containing several items. A small vial of clear liquid, a typed document detailing poison administration methods, and most disturbingly, 3 photographs of Killian at work with Cleo at the park, sleeping in their bed, each marked with handwritten notes about routines and vulnerabilities. "She was stalking me in my own home," he said quietly, the violation sinking deep into his bones. "There's more." Vale handed him another evidence bag. This was beneath the floorboards. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten letter addressed to Ash, dated just days before the arrest. Killian read the contents with growing horror. "If primary plan fails, use contents of drive for alternative disposal. Coordinates for remote location attached. Kay can still have his accident, even if Friday doesn't work. No second chances after this. Lenore," Killian murmured. "A backup plan." "We've examined the drive," Vale said. "Contains detailed instructions for staging a different accident, a mechanical failure in your truck, time to occur on a mountain road to Bend." The cold calculation stunned him anew. They'd been prepared not just for one murder attempt, but multiple. His death had been all but certain in their minds, just a matter of which method succeeded. "Have you shown this to Ash yet?" Killian asked. "Scheduled for this afternoon. His lawyer's been pushing for a deal, claiming he was a reluctant participant. This should end that fiction." Vale's expression hardened. "No one involved in this conspiracy is getting leniency. I promise you that." Killian nodded, a strange calm settling over him. The evidence continued to mount, the case growing stronger by the day. Justice would be served, not the poetic kind he might have wished for in his darkest moments, but the legal, permanent kind that would keep Cleo safe and the conspirators confined. That evening, Vale called with an update. Ash broke completely when confronted with the new evidence. Gave a full confession, implicated both Marla and Lenore in explicit detail. Says Lenore was the mastermind, Marla the willing accomplice, and he just the desperate pawn. And the $50,000 from Lenore's account, payment to a former patient of hers, a handyman with a record. He installed the false wall and was supposed to handle the truck's sabotage if necessary. Vale's voice held grim satisfaction. "We've arrested him as well. The circle is complete." Killian thought of Cleo's warning that it started at all, "Don't drink what she gives you," and the journey from that moment to this one. The surveillance, the evidence gathering, the sting operation. The complete dismantling of a murder conspiracy that had nearly succeeded. "Is it enough?" he asked quietly. "For maximum sentences?" "More than enough," Vale assured him. "They're facing decades, Killian. This ends here." As he hung up, Killian felt the first real stirrings of relief. The danger was truly passing. The conspirators were unraveling, turning on each other, their carefully constructed plan collapsing under the weight of exposure and evidence. One final scene remained in this tragedy: the court's judgment, the formal closing of a chapter that had nearly ended his life and traumatized his daughter. And then, at last, they could begin to rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. The courtroom felt too small for the magnitude of what had occurred, an ordinary room of polished wood and fluorescent lighting, unremarkable except for the life-altering decisions rendered within its walls. Killian sat in the front row, Blair and Trina flanking him in silent support as the sentencing hearing began. 6 months had passed since the arrests. 6 months of preliminary hearings, evidence submissions, psychiatric evaluations, and legal maneuvering. 6 months during which Killian had sold their house, purchased a modest 3-bedroom near Trina and Bend, and opened a new garage that was already developing a solid reputation. 6 months of healing for Cleo, who now slept through the night without nightmares and had rediscovered her love of drawing. The court had spared them a full trial. Faced with overwhelming evidence, all three defendants had eventually entered guilty pleas negotiating not for reduced charges, but merely to avoid the additional public exposure and expense of trial proceedings. Now they sat at the defense table. Marla in a conservative dress that couldn't disguise her diminished appearance, hair pulled back severely from a face stripped of its usual perfect makeup. Ash beside her, shoulders hunched, refusing to meet anyone's eyes, and Lenore at the end, somehow, maintaining her imperious posture despite prison garb and circumstances, her gaze fixed straight ahead as if the proceedings were beneath her notice. Judge Harriet Monroe, known for her no-nonsense approach to sentencing, studied the courtroom before speaking. This case represents one of the most disturbing conspiracies this court has encountered in its 20-year history. The calculated nature of the crime, the involvement of a child, the abuse of trust, these factors elevate an already serious matter to one deserving the court's fullest condemnation. She turned her attention to the defendants. Having reviewed all evidence, impact statements, and pre-sentencing reports, I am prepared to deliver judgment. The defendants will rise. Marla, Ash, and Lenore stood, their attorneys rising beside them. Marla Brooks, the judge began, this court finds your actions particularly egregious. As a mother and wife, you occupied positions of sacred trust. You not only betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way by conspiring to murder your husband, but you knowingly exposed your child to psychological trauma in the process. Marla's face remained impassive, though her hands trembled visibly. This court sentences you to 20 years imprisonment for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, with additional concurrent sentences for insurance fraud, child endangerment, and forgery. You will serve a minimum of 15 years before possibility of parole. A soft murmur ran through the courtroom. The sentence was severe by local standards, a reflection of the judge's disgust with the crime. Ashton Rourke, Judge Monroe, continued. As an educator entrusted with the care of children, your participation in this conspiracy represents an unconscionable betrayal of professional ethics. While the court acknowledges your cooperation with authorities following arrest, your willing involvement in a plot that traumatized a child cannot be overlooked. Ash seemed to shrink further under her gaze. This court sentences you to 12 years imprisonment for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, with additional concurrent sentences for insurance fraud and violation of professional ethics. You will serve a minimum of 8 years before possibility of parole. Additionally, your teaching license is permanently revoked in all 50 states. Ash closed his eyes briefly, accepting the judgment without visible reaction. He'd known since his confession that his career was over, his future destroyed by greed and desperation. The former teacher nodded once, a small gesture of acknowledgement, before staring back at the floor. Lenore Quinn, Judge Monroe continued, her voice taking on an even sharper edge. The evidence demonstrates that you were the primary architect of this conspiracy. You exploited your daughter's marital difficulties, manipulated a financially desperate man, forged legal documents, and most disturbingly, used your medical knowledge to plan a murder designed to appear natural. Lenore finally turned her gaze to the judge, her expression unchanged, the same cold superiority she displayed throughout her life, undiminished by orange prison garb or handcuffs. Furthermore, the judge continued, your willful traumatization of your own granddaughter, using her as a pawn in this scheme, threatening her, and dismissing her distress demonstrates a profound moral emptiness that this court finds particularly disturbing. For the first time, Lenore's composure flickered slightly. She hadn't expected her treatment of Cleo to feature so prominently in the judgment. This court sentences you to 25 years imprisonment for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, with additional concurrent sentences for insurance fraud, forgery, and child endangerment. A visible tremor ran through Lenore's body, the first crack in her carefully maintained facade. The prison psychiatrist had warned during pre-sentencing that Lenore's mental stability was increasingly fragile, her narcissistic personality struggling to reconcile her self-image with her new reality as a convicted felon. Additionally, Judge Monroe continued, Based on psychiatric evaluation and the recommendation of medical professionals, this court orders that you begin your sentence at the Millwood Secure Psychiatric Facility for comprehensive mental health treatment before transfer to standard incarceration. That was the breaking point. The tremor became a violent shudder as Lenore's face contorted, decades of carefully constructed control crumbling in an instant. "You have no right," she shrieked, lunging forward only to be restrained by court officers. "Do you know who I am? Who my family is in this town? This is absurd. These people are nothing. He's nothing." Her finger jabbed toward Killian, spittle flying from her lips as her voice rose to a hysterical pitch. "He took her from me, corrupted her. Everything I built, everything I planned ruined by a grease monkey with no breeding, no education, no." "Remove the defendant," Judge Monroe ordered calmly above the commotion as officers dragged Lenore from the courtroom, still ranting. Her face twisted in fury. Killian felt no satisfaction, only a profound relief. The mask had finally fallen completely, revealing the true face of the woman who'd orchestrated his destruction. No one watching could doubt her guilt or the depth of her obsession. Judge Monroe gavelled the proceedings to order once Lenore had been removed. This concludes the sentencing phase. Court is adjourned. The aftermath was anticlimactic after the drama of Lenore's breakdown. Marla was led away without looking back, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Ash followed, head bowed. Their attorneys gathered papers, already discussing appeal possibilities, though all knew the sentences would likely stand. Outside the courthouse, under a clear Oregon sky, Killian stood with Trina and Blair, absorbing the finality of what had just occurred. "It's really over," Trina said, squeezing his arm. "They can't hurt you or Cleo anymore." "Not directly," Killian agreed. "But there's still damage to repair. One day at a time," Blair advised. "You've got a good head start already." It was true. The 6 months since the arrests had been productive despite the legal proceedings looming over everything. Killian had sold their house in Maple Hollow, quickly a young couple from Portland, unaware of its history, eager for small-town life. He'd used the proceeds to purchase a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a new development outside Bend, close enough to Trina's family for regular visits, but far enough from Maple Hollow to escape the whispers and stares. The custody hearing had been straightforward, given the circumstances. The judge had granted Killian full legal and physical custody of Cleo without hesitation, with Marla's parental rights suspended during her incarceration and subject to strict judicial review afterward. Any future visitation would be supervised and contingent on extensive psychiatric evaluation, a distant concern that Killian wouldn't need to address for many years. Most importantly, Cleo was healing. Dr. Talcott had continued therapy with her throughout the legal proceedings, helping her process the trauma gradually. The nightmares had subsided after 3 months. The fearful silences had given way to cautious conversation, then to something approaching her former childish exuberance. She'd returned to school, a new school in Bend, where no one knew her story or whispered about her family. "You're coming for dinner tonight, right?" Trina asked as they walked toward the parking lot. "Javier's been asking about Cleo all day. Says he has a new video game to show her." Cleo was waiting at the main entrance of Aspen Ridge Elementary when Killian pulled up, her backpack clutched to her chest, watching the parade of departing students with thoughtful eyes. She'd become more observant since everything happened, more attuned to the adults around her. Dr. Talcott said it was a common response to trauma, heightened awareness, a protective instinct that would gradually normalize as she felt more secure. She spotted his truck and ran over, climbing in with a smile that still caught him off guard, sometimes a glimpse of the Cleo from before, the unburdened child gradually re-emerging. "Hey, Cleo Bear," he greeted her. "Good day at school." "Uh-huh. I got an A on my science project." Mrs. Winters put it on the display wall. She buckled her seatbelt, studying his face with that perceptive gaze. "You went to court today." Not a question. She always knew their schedule, kept track of important dates with careful attention. "I did," he confirmed as they pulled away from the curb. "It's done now." The judge made her decision. "They're going to jail?" "All of them." "Yes." "For a very long time." He kept his explanation simple, age-appropriate. as Dr. Talcott had advised. Your mom for 20 years, Mr. Rourke for 12, Grandma Lenore for 25, though she'll be in a hospital first. Cleo absorbed this information silently, looking out the window at the passing scenery. Finally, she asked, "Will I have to see them?" "Not if you don't want to," Killian assured her. "That's completely your choice, and not something you need to decide for a long, long time." She nodded, apparently satisfied. "Can we stop at the art store? I need more paper." The request warmed him another sign of healing. Cleo's art had transformed gradually over the months, evolving from those dark, frightening images to increasingly colorful drawings. Landscapes at first, safe and distant. Then animals, particularly dogs, she hoped to convince Killian to adopt. Recently, she'd begun drawing people again herself. Killian, Trina, and Javier, their new life taking visual form under her crayons. "Absolutely," he agreed. "We're having dinner at Aunt Trina's, but we have time for a quick stop." The art store was small but well-stocked, a discovery they'd made during their first week in Bend. The owner, a retired art teacher named May, greeted Cleo by name as they entered. "My favorite young artist. What can I help you find today?" Cleo approached the counter with newfound confidence. "I need a big sketch pad. The biggest one. A serious project." May winked at Killian before leading Cleo to a display of oversized drawing pads. "Something special in mind?" "It's a surprise," Cleo replied, selecting a pad nearly as tall as she was. "For Daddy." "Ah, then I'd better help you wrap it after purchase." May conspiratorially blocked Killian's view. No peeking, Dad. At Trina's house that evening, while the adults prepared dinner and Javier set up his new game system, Cleo disappeared into the guest room with her mysterious art purchase. She emerged only when called for dinner, sliding into her seat with a secretive smile. The meal was lively, normal in a way that had once seemed impossible to recapture. Trina recounted a workplace mishap that had everyone laughing. Javier described his basketball team's victory with animated gestures. Killian shared news of a potential contract with a local fleet service that could double his new garage's business. After dessert, Cleo disappeared again, returning moments later with her oversized sketch pad. "I made something," she announced, suddenly shy despite her earlier confidence. "It's for our new house." She turned the pad around, revealing a drawing that made Killian's breath catch in his throat. It showed their new home in remarkable detail for a 7-year-old artist: the blue front door, the maple tree in the yard, even the sign for his garage visible in the background. But it was the figures in the foreground that squeezed his heart. Himself and Cleo, holding hands, both wearing enormous smiles. Behind them stood a large dog, the German Shepherd she'd been campaigning for since moving to Bend. And above them all, drawn in the upper corner of the sky, was a woman with Cleo's smile, Caroline Brooks, Killian's mother, watching over them like a guardian angel. Most striking was the cape she'd drawn on Killian's figure, bright red, flowing behind him like a superhero's. "It's beautiful, Cleo," he said, blinking back unexpected tears. "Is that a cape I'm wearing?" She nodded solemnly. "Because you saved us. Like a superhero." Trina made a soft sound beside him, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "That's exactly right, Cleo. Your dad is definitely a superhero." Later, as they drove home under a sky scattered with stars, Cleo drowsy in the passenger seat with her precious artwork propped carefully behind them, Killian reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The betrayal, the pain, the fear, but also the discovery of strength he hadn't known he possessed. The capacity to fight for his child with everything he had. The ability to rebuild from ruins. "Daddy," Cleo murmured, half asleep. "Yes, Cleo Bear. I'm glad they didn't hurt you." "Me too, sweetheart." He reached over to squeeze her hand gently. "Me too. You were too strong for them," she said with complete confidence, before drifting off to sleep. Killian smiled, watching the road ahead unfold in his headlights. She was right, though not in the way she imagined. His strength hadn't been physical, but something deeper: the resilience to uncover the truth, the courage to face it, the determination to protect what mattered most. The garage in Bend was already developing a reputation for quality work. The new house was beginning to feel like home. Most importantly, Cleo was drawing happy pictures again, her spirit recovering its natural brightness. They had a future to build, untainted by the toxicity of the past. As he turned onto their street, Killian glanced at his sleeping daughter, this extraordinary child who'd tried to warn him, who'd suffered silently rather than betray her father, who now saw him as a caped hero worthy of her colorful artwork. For her, he would have fought any battle, faced any enemy, even those who had once been family. You don't poison a fighter and expect him to die quietly.